Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to crack open a spiritual debate that's been going on for 700 years. And believe it or not, we're going to unlock it with a surprisingly modern key.
Okay, so let's dive right in. The 13th century Japanese monk Nichiren, well, he's got a reputation for being, let's say, harsh. He was famously sharply critical of other Buddhist schools, which has led a lot of people to just dismiss him as another angry, divisive figure. But is that the whole story? I don't think so.
I mean, his writings really pull no punches. He directly challenged the most popular forms of Buddhism in his day, calling them out for what he saw as pretty fundamental errors. And yeah, on the surface, it absolutely looks like a straightforward sectarian beef.
But here's where it gets interesting. The framework Nichiren himself was working from, which he got from the ancient Nirvana Sutra, describes the spiritual path not as a fight, but as this beautiful, nourishing process. See, milk is refined into cream, then into curd, then butter, and finally into its purest form, ghee. Every stage has value, for sure, but it's not the end of the road.
So this is the central puzzle, isn't it? How do you square this really harsh critique with such a gentle, organic metaphor? It feels like a total contradiction. To solve it, we need to look at the maps he was using.
So our journey starts with the first map he was using, an ancient Buddhist system for classifying all the different teachings. This is what gives us the original context for everything Nichiren was arguing.
The system is called panjiao, and what's so brilliant about it is that it doesn't see different Buddhist scriptures as competing truths. Nope. Instead, it sees them as skillful means, or appaya, basically teachings that are perfectly calibrated for people at different points on their spiritual journey. So it's not about what's wrong, but what's right for you right now.
Okay, now for the wild part. We can actually unlock this ancient system with a totally modern tool, a psychological framework that was developed a whole 700 years after Nichiren lived. This is our decoder ring.
So in 1981, a developmental psychologist named James Fowler published his Stages of Faith. He'd done hundreds of interviews across all sorts of religions and mapped out this universal path of how our faith tends to develop. We usually start out relying on external authority and literal stories, and then, hopefully, we can grow toward embracing paradox, complexity, and a much more universal compassion.
And this is where the light bulb really goes on. When you put these two systems side by side, the parallels are just stunning. I mean, they map onto each other almost perfectly. Those provisional teachings Nichiren was so critical of, they line up exactly with Fowler's early, more literal and conventional stages. And the Lotus Sutra, which Nichiren saw as the absolute ultimate teaching, that aligns with Fowler's most advanced stages. It's like they're two different maps of the exact same human journey.
Okay, so now that we have this combined map, let's take a look at Nichiren's first major critique, his argument against the incredibly popular Pure Land school of Buddhism.
Using our new lens, we can see that Nichiren wasn't actually saying Pure Land was wrong or bad. It's a milk or butter stage. It's nourishing. It's a valuable step. It focuses on a savior Buddha, which, maps perfectly to Fowler's early devotional stages that rely on an external power. So the problem wasn't the teaching itself. The problem was institutional. The Pure Land schools back then were basically telling people that butter was the final product. That's it. You're done. They presented this early, very accessible stage of faith as the ultimate goal, which just stopped the whole churning process and halted spiritual growth right in its tracks.
And this is the specific harm he was diagnosing. A provisional teaching is kind of like a raft to get you across a river. But if the institution convinces you that the raft is the shore, well, it's not helping you anymore, it's trapping you. It becomes a kindness that actually functions as an obstacle.
Now, let's see how this idea builds to his second big critique. This one was aimed at the highly sophisticated, esoteric Shingon school. And this was a totally different kind of problem.
See, Nichiren didn't view Shingon as some kind of early-stage teaching. Not at all. He acknowledged its power, its philosophical depth, how it used the body, speech, and mind through these really complex rituals. So this wasn't a case of arrested development in the same way.
He argued the issue was one of calibration. If we use a modern analogy, it's like the Shingon school had built this incredible, powerful technology. The problem was, it was pointed at the wrong database. It was aimed at a cosmic Buddha that Shingon placed above the historical Buddha's final teaching in the Lotus Sutra.
So his response wasn't to just throw the whole technology out. It was to repoint it. As you can see here, he took Shingon's core concepts, its sacred object, its sacred phrase, its sacred space, and he recalibrated all of them to focus directly on the Lotus Sutra.
He wasn't trying to destroy the instrument, he was just retuning it to what he believed was the correct frequency.
And all of this brings us to the final, and I think most crucial takeaway, why a 700-year-old debate is actually so incredibly relevant for us right now.
Here's the core warning. The real harm happens when a spiritual institution, which should be designed to foster growth, instead creates a cozy, comfortable plateau and calls it the summit. It takes our natural, innate desire to develop and basically corrupts it by channeling it into reinforcing where we already are.
And this warning has never been more urgent. Think about it. We live in an age of commodified spirituality, where market forces reward whatever's easy and satisfying. Social media algorithms are literally designed to keep us in our comfort zones. And institutions, well, by their very nature, they want to reproduce loyal members, not create individuals who might actually grow beyond the institution itself.
The antidote, then, as it is now, is to remember that metaphor. The butter doesn't become ghee just by being consumed more and more devotedly. The process itself, the churn, has to continue. The practice has to hold its own forms lightly enough to allow for real change and real growth.
And that leaves us with a final question to really think about. Nichiren's critiques, they weren't just about ancient Japanese Buddhism. They were a profound warning against stagnation. So the question for us is, what in our own lives, spiritual, professional, or personal, has become comfortable butter, when it was always meant to become ghee? Where have we allowed the churn to stop?